2 feet planted on the floor. Take a deep breath in. Take a deep breath out. Take another deep breath in. Take one more out. On this last breath in, I want you to think about the changes that we will continue to make to reduce stigma, fear, and discrimination. Think about our brothers, our sisters, whose names we will never know. Living with and impacted by HIV, not only here, but abroad. Think about the power that you hold within yourself to be the change makers, not only in our community, but across our globe. I ask you to exhale. I ask you to open your eyes when you're ready. And let's begin. Stigma and discrimination. I can sit anywhere, any day of the week, and probably talk about stigma all day long. Okay? I could then come the next morning and talk more about stigma, probably without mentioning what I said yesterday about stigma. When you hear the word stigma, what are some of the things that comes to your mind? You can just shout it out.
Fear.
Shame.
Fear, shame.
Fear of the unknown.
Fear of the unknown.
Ignorance.
Ignorance.
Family.
Race.
Race. Family.
Bullying.
Hurt. Bullying.
Church.
Church. I was wondering when church was going to get called. Okay.
Judgmental.
Judgmental.
Opportunity.
Trauma. Opportunity. Outcast.
Control.
Control.
Family.
Family.
Rejection.
Rejection. Growth. Now, all of those things came up within 90 seconds. Okay? And that's just the tip of the iceberg. So think about what comes up when we have the opportunity to ask our clients and the people that we are providing care for. Stigma and discrimination. We start this slide deck with this statement. The institution of medicine in the United States was and is still being built with the lives of Black and African Americans. The institution of medicine in the United States was and is still being built with the lives of Black and African Americans. Strongly agree, neutral, disagree, or strongly disagree?
Strongly
Agree.
Strongly agree. From the earliest onsets of medicine as we know it, people who were enslaved, oftentimes who looked like you and I, was built on their backs and on their lives. The next couple of slides are some of those individuals and organizations that, could be seen as permanent institutions, but often those institutions have deep, dark histories that we have either forgotten about or just don't talk about. Some of these institutions may be the people who pay you. Okay? But again, they built their careers, their prominence and fame on the backs of black and brown people. Ephraim McDowell. Dr. Ephraim McDowell is an American surgeon who's considered a founder of operative gynecology. The first to remove an ovarian tumor back in 1809, demonstrating the feasibility of this elective abdominal surgery. The issue is, he perfected this dangerous and radical surgery on non-consenting enslaved women. McDowell Health. Health systems, the organization of health, okay, are deeply connected to non-consent. That's why it's so important when you go into new health systems, you see a patient bill of rights. You know, you actually get proper documentation of what is going to occur. Because we come from a history where that did not happen. Crawford Long, the discoverer of anesthesia. The discoverer of anesthesia. Okay? Since that time, he's been recognized by medical bodies all over the world. It has been memorialized by monuments, statues, paintings, and on a postage stamp. He did the majority of his work in early experiments on non-consenting men and women. Crawford Long is a part of which hospital and university?
Emory.
Huh? Emory University. Emory University. Downtown Atlanta, Druid Hills, all over. Their founder is deeply connected to experiments on non-consenting enslaved men and women. Okay? John Brown. John Brown was an escaped slave who fled to England and dictated his memoirs, which were published under the title of Slave Life in Georgia, a narrative of the life, suffering, and escape of John Brown, a fugitive slave now in England. In his memoirs, he recants his experiences with Dr. Thomas Hamilton, who used the heat therapy as an experimental method to treat Brown after years of abuse as a slave. The method entailed forcing Brown to sit on a box while a fire burned beneath him to test the impact of extreme heat on the body. Heat therapy. Torture. Marion Sims, an American physician and pioneer of the field of surgery, known as the father of modern gynecology. Most significant work was development of the surgical technique to repair vasovaginal fistulas, a severe complication of obstructed childbirth. Who did he enroll? Or lack of enroll? He performed these surgeries, again, on non-consenting enslaved women, addicted them not only to narcotics, to sedate them and immobilize them. Post-surgery, he also performed the surgery repeatedly on the same woman. Torture. is built on the backs of black and brown people. Medicine is built on the backs of black and brown people. This translates into retention and engagement of our clients every day of the week. Let me say that again. This translates into the engagement and retention of our clients every day of the week. These are the horrors that we can clearly document. But our grandmothers, our mothers, our fathers, our brothers, our sons, our daughters, our grandchildren are still being mistreated in 2023. In 2023, at that intersection of medicine. Newly minted physicians, new doctors, like doctors who just graduated last week and like this upcoming Saturday.
Right.
Still believe black and brown people can tolerate pain
That's right.
more than white people.
That's the truth.
Black and brown people living with HIV across the South are less likely to be prescribed antiretroviral therapy for HIV. Still today. It's only been a gold standard that everyone living with HIV starts medicine immediately since 2012. 2023 minus 2012 is 11. 11 years. We are still fighting the basic fight to ensure access is given to folks who look like us. Okay? So again, like, this is the historical aspect. It's still today. The Tuskegee study. Oh, wait. I'm gonna black it out. Tell me what you know about the Tuskegee study. Come on. And I'll repeat it out loud, okay?
They have people, individuals that tested syphilis and they but prior to that, I lived in that era, and they would pick black women and men up and put them in a bus and take them out of the city, leave the kids out of tent and take them away, and then they come back, they fall sick, and the kids were left without parents. So what the government did, they was trying to do what they call black genocide at that time.
Black genocide. Okay. I'm abbreviating it, okay? They got people, they either injected them with syphilis, okay? Took them all away, okay? Kids left unaccounted for, connected to black genocide, okay? What else you know about Tuskegee? I'm gonna come to the back.
So they use a lot of strategies that we use today to gain the trust of the black community. They got an African American nurse to go in the community to talk to these people to get them enrolled in this study. They went around to the community all in that area and they had treatment for syphilis at the time. They told them not to treat these people because they were enrolled in the study and went around to the tri-state area so people knew there was treatment for it, would go to the doctor. The doctors had been talked to ahead of time, told to refuse treatment for them. They were given placebos, telling them they were getting treatment, they weren't. And this happened for years. This 70s, they uncovered it. They still continued along with it.
Thank you. Who else? Anyone else? Anything that's missing?
The military men that they.
The military men.
Yes.
Okay.
They became like the icons because the military soldiers that they injected, they became icons and historians because they lived to tell the people how they were treated. But prior to that, there were no doctors and stuff to treat black people at that time, so holistic medicine and herbal stuff was used by our foreparents, and so they had cures for all these different things at that time. So we didn't have to go to the doctor, we had midwives, etc. So when you got these different diseases, the foreparents would cook up herbs and different spices, and your parents always told you, your healing was in your food.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Ooh.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So this is on the slide. I think you hit just about everything. I be keeping this because they don't give me enough room for my runway. I'm like a 747. I need a runway, huh? 1932, the Public Health Service, PHS. PHS is the forerunner of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. PHS is the forerunner, okay, for the Centers of Disease and Control and Prevention. Yeah, CDC, okay? They're the precursors, okay? They changed their name after this study came, okay? All right. The PHS, working with Tuskegee Institute, began a study to record the natural history of syphilis called the Tuskegee Study of Untreated Syphilis in the Negro Male. So about 636 black men were placed into this study. Okay? The study was conducted without the benefit of patients-informed consent. So that consent form that you see that we use for everything now, that was not a thing. That was not a thing. Okay? The men were never given adequate treatment for their disease, even when penicillin became the drug of choice for syphilis in 1947. So, okay, do the math with me. The study started in 1932. We have a prescription in 1947. So that's 15 years right there. That's 15 years. Okay? What's missing on this slide is an investigator of the New York Times found out about this study, okay, and the fact that they have men living with syphilis with proper medication that can treat and cure syphilis in 1966. 47, 57, 67. So 19 years. The study lasted until 1972. So another 6 years. 21, 9, 0. Wait, no, that's 11, 9. So 2. I can't do math in real time. 2, 3, 4. Huh? 40 to 50. Give or take. Go with it. A half a century.
It is a half a century.
A half a
It
century.
is a half a century.
A half a century, okay? What's missing up here, President Clinton during his first administration, issued an official apology on the behalf of the United States government in the Rose Garden. An official apology on the behalf of the government. Now, an apology is one thing.
Right.
No reparations
I was
paid
just
with the
right.
apology.
Exactly.
No, this is an IOU. This is a check to cover your health care, to cover the mistreatment of these 50 years. Nothing for the descendants of the individuals who was placed into the study. The last participant in this study died in 2004. They still got grandbabies alive.
Yeah.
It's still today. It is still happening today. It is still happening today. Okay? It is still happening today. I think if you even, think about the fact that the study ended in 72, roughly 8, 9 years, 10 years later, the onset of a new mysterious disease is plaguing the same community now
Yeah, right now.
with HIV and AIDS. It's all interwoven and connected.
Do we talk about how HIV started, like where it came from?
In this session, in this training, no. All of it is interconnected, it's interwoven.
I was just gonna say, if you wanna put that in a community garden, you can do that.
It's all interconnected and interwoven. Okay? Please.
I told you before, I'm 64, but all of my life, I've heard about the black community not trusting doctors and medicine.
Mhm.
All of my life.
Mhm.
And it's a reality.
Mhm.
They still ask the question, don't know why. Why it's all in the blood.
Look around. Thank you. Thank you.
You got one more.
I'm gonna try to make it short.
Oh.
But still today, and I went through public health and on whatever, but I am a black lesbian and 66 years old, single. But I still ask if I think I'm getting involved sexually with someone, I ask them, have you had a full panel STD, including HIV? And they think she crazy. So my name is crazy. No, you're not getting in my bed, I'm not getting in your bed until I see your full panel. And people still think in the lesbian community, I know in the black lesbian community, that we cannot give each other an STD. And I think that's crazy. And I teach my sons, I have 2 sons, and I teach them, if you go sleep with somebody, you better look at their test results. And don't come to me with your sick dick and ask me anything. And that's how I talk to my black son. Don't come to me with your sick dick and ask me no questions, because I told you what to do.
Absolutely.
And we have to make sure that we tell my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren the same thing.
Absolutely. It's everyone has to be included in this message. Thank you for
what you said resonated with me, but also, Tennessee is the absolute only state that doesn't teach comprehensive sex education, even with a lens for heterosexual people, let alone a person that's in the spectrum. So I think that denying that people have sex is a disjustice to any medical practice.
Thank you. I mean, I think y'all gave back something, well, you didn't give back. Y'all refused to take HIV money recently. I heard something about that, but, you know.
We're not gonna get on that right
Okay,
now.
okay, we don't have to talk about it.
Garden.
But with this Tuskegee study, I was just sitting here because it resonates so hard. My fiance is from Tuskegee. And so with the onset of COVID, like that brought about a whole family meeting for even the grandparents to talk to us younger people and be like, are y'all sure it's safe? And like the reassurances and the fact that he had to hold his dad's hand just for his dad to be able to sit there and take that COVID vaccination because that fear was just so great. And even him, as the son of, you know, coming from Tuskegee, like that ingrained fear that he grew up with, he actually, you know, did an interview on CNN about it because he really had to have a come to Jesus meeting with himself about whether or not he was going to take the vaccination because he was just like, I just don't trust it. I can't. I don't know what they're trying to do.
Absolutely.
And just seeing the years, it's just like, wow, now I understand.
I don't need the mic. I think also something that has
Even
Okay.
if you don't need the mic,
Even the loud
let's use the
ones.
mic.
So I think something that also has happened within the Black community and communities of color, but specifically the Black community, because of this medical mistrust that has happened among white providers and doctors, some people that are Black have developed mistrust with Black providers, right? It doesn't just go along with our own people. And I know I'm only 40, but when I was younger, my grandparents, like their doctors were white, right? And we started on this new boldness of wanting Black providers, but I've ran into a lot of people that still inherently don't even trust what their Black providers say, but something else, and I'm gonna pass the mic, that is paramount. Like you said, Dr. Keller, we have to remember, we trust our own myths more than we trust providers. So we have to find a balance as Black people on what information we trust and how we disseminate the information to keep our community safe and to keep us away from stigma.
Thank you.
Now, I think it's so important that this is taught in schools and to everyone. I know the big challenge I have when talking to family and friends is, oh, this is ancient history. It can't happen here. It's still happening here. And then, oh, there's stuff in place where it can't happen again. It's like, no, there's really not a lot of oversight with a lot of these studies and the way medicines are put out and stuff. Like, you see all these ads on TV, like, call us now if you've been exposed to mesothelioma, you know, it's still happening today. And we're not that far removed from this study. We're not that far removed. We want to point the finger at other countries. Like, this was going on when they were doing the trials of the Nazis, right? And the laws that are coming out, that reporter was actually talking about the laws and stuff that were going on that were in place by the United States government, and we were violating our own laws on that. Slavery's not that far removed. You know, we're not that far removed from any of that. We still have it in the textbooks, like you were saying now, about the pain and stuff that's still going on. We've got to educate our children, educate the community that this is not that long ago. You know, I mean, we have people alive that lived through this.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm come to you.
I guess, and being a Black person and having to deal with the healthcare system, I got differing feelings about how I feel about medications and doctors and all that. I was diagnosed in 1986 when there wasn't with HIV and there wasn't a whole lot of information. I elected of my own decision not to take AZT because I said everybody around me is dying. So that was one decision, and I didn't take any drugs for the next 32 years. I went on medication in antiretrovirals in 2018 when my doctor says, now you are elderly, you are 60-something, almost 60-something years old, you are going to have, you may have other issues that may be impacted by HIV. Then COVID comes along. I hear the arguments, I'm a black person, I hear the arguments, I know about Tuskegee. I know about all the other things, Henrietta Lacks and other things that they've done to blacks in the healthcare system. And yet I'm looking at, again, a disease that's taking people out. So I had to make a quick decision as to whether I was going to get injected with that. And then I thought about it later, and I joked about it even, because I could not discount Tuskegee. I could not discount the other stories. And I thought about it, and I said, well, I have to make a quick decision. And the decision was, well, I could either die now, or I could try this and maybe not die. Well, obviously I didn't. But I also think, and to this day I think, and I joke about it, I may be plastic inside, because having taken antiretrovirals, shingle shots, pneumonia shots, every other shot that comes along, and all the COVID vaccinations and boosters, I think I might just be plastic inside. So I still have that fear, and I still have that trepidation about taking medications, and it doesn't go away. And now I'm having a new conversation with my doctor about hypertension, because some drugs I can't take, they work perfectly with high blood pressure, they cause other problems. My feet, legs swell, all kinds of craziness goes on. So even being informed, I guess the question is, how do you get people who are your peers and the clients that come to our organizations, how do you get them to understand a lot of this and be more informed and give that informed consent when some of us have the doubts and we are informed? So it's kind of really a conundrum of how do you get people to, and I guess it's about education, but there's a point where you just have to say,
You can't give me the mic.
I guess I struggle with how do you get people to understand how important it is to know, but you can't push people to a decision one way or the other.
Absolutely. Okay. We're gonna come to the question, okay? Go ahead, ma'am.
One of the things that I'm struggling with now is having gone, you talk about doctors not listening, and I'm one of those people that's very proactive in my health care. I read, I research, and then I call the doctor. Last week, I had a doctor's appointment, and I'm telling them what's going on with me. And immediately, my neurologist looks at me and tells me, I need to get out of my shoes. That, first of all, I'm looking at him because he's not listening to me. So I sat down and I said to him again, we need to talk. And he's looking at his watch. So I'm still sitting there like, whenever you start looking at your watch, we're going to have a conversation. Number one, the first thing he tells me is, get out of my shoes. You're not going to tell me that my shoes are the cause of my problems. If I get up in the morning and I'm experiencing weakness, that's coming from something else. My shoes are not, I'm not sleeping in my shoes. So that was, when you talk about listening, and I said to him, and I know I made him uncomfortable, and I said to him, if I was a white woman sitting in front of you, would you listen to me, and would you take seriously my concerns? He says, well, I'm not prejudiced. I said, but you said that, I didn't. So what I'm saying is sometimes we have to have those tough conversations, and we have to make people feel uncomfortable in those spaces so that when we do leave, they think about how they treated us, and hopefully they'll change it. Because I said to him, if you can't work with me and talk to me, I think I need to find another doctor. Because see, I'm nothing but a paycheck for you, but for me, my life matters.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, this is going to be the last one.
I just gotta cringe when I hear certain things because they don't care about women, period.
Especially black women.
Black women.
But women, period, they will tell women, period, oh, you don't have a contract. You got this, that's imaginary. I've seen them do it to my aunts, my mother. I watched that kind of stuff happen. I don't trust a lot of you being misinformed. I don't care nothing about your color. Because if you're a black doctor, and I had a black doctor tell me, after just a physical, I'm going in and get a physical like I do every year. He was ignorant. And he sat there with gloves on, because he read my HIV diagnosis in a mask way before COVID. Like he was scared to touch me and asked me what kind of physical I wanted. And I got up and put my clothes on and tell him I don't want shit from you.
Okay.
So I fired doctor.
It's still happening today. It is still happening today. Okay? Sickle cell screening. In the 70s, large-scale screenings of African Americans for sickle cell was used to change African American mating behavior.
Right.
Okay? States passed legislation requiring all African American children to be screened for sickle cell, even though there was no treatment for the disease. Insurance companies and employers use the screening data to deny or increase insurance rates or fire employees. It goes as far as the U.S. Army considered banning all African Americans from service. African Americans came to believe, again, that the screening efforts were disguised as genocide. My mama was born in 1967. My aunt was born in 1973. So, like, you can still touch people who've experienced these occurrences. We mentioned Henrietta Lacks.
Yes.
Henrietta Lacks was a 30-year-old African-American woman with 5 children. She was diagnosed with an unusual aggressive form of cervical cancer at Johns Hopkins Hospital in 1951. Johns Hopkins Hospital, the permanent public health institution and medical system. Tissue samples were taken during her diagnostics and treatment without her permission, as a common practice at this time. Her cells, the immortal cells of Henrietta Lacks, HeLa cells, have been used to advance medicine over the past 6 decades. If there's a medication that you take, at some point in time, that medicine was developed off of HeLa cells. Although the original researcher gave the cells away to anyone who asked for the cell line, and downstream discoveries became extremely lucrative, the original researcher would give these cells away for free. After about 80 or so, 1980, the girls in the accounts receivable said, "Now sis, we losing a lot of money from y'all, just passing these things out. We're just gonna put a small nominal fee on it." None of that money that Hopkins received goes to her family, or goes to the descendants of hers. The Lack family received no financial benefit and continued to live in poverty with limited health access. Again, this is a story that we know about. This is a story that we know about. Think about the stories we don't know about from the smaller hospital systems across our country. Family planning and involuntary sterilization. Early family planning initiatives were aimed at controlling and reducing the Black population. In 1939, the Birth Control Foundation of America planning a Negro project designed to limit reproductions by blacks. In the 60s, the government expanded the subsidization of family planning clinics as a way to reduce the number of persons on welfare, establishing clinics in proportion to the number of blacks and Hispanics in the community. So again, these are things sanctioned and ruled by the powers that be. The people who you vote for or lack thereof vote for, codified within our laws to limit the size of our families. In the 70s, some doctors would only deliver babies or perform abortions on pregnant African American women if the women considered sterilization. You don't have to stop in the 70s. During the last administration.
That's right. Yes.
During the last administration, individuals on our southern border were forcibly sterilized while detained. It's still happening today. It's still happening today. So it says historical trauma and medical mistrust, but it's contemporary trauma and medical mistrust. The institution of medicine across the United States was and is still built on the lives of black and brown people. The United States of America has a history and pattern of creating mistrust through systematic discrimination and abuse of power of people of color. So when we say systematic, we mean multiple congruent systems, including health, economics, housing, prison, pipeline complex, multiple systems, multiple interlocking puzzle pieces work together to make this a reality. This goes into the beginning of our conversation of othering. When I say othering, what comes to your mind?
Them and us.
Them and us. Someone besides me. Separation. Ostracization.
Stigma.
Thank you. Stigma. Stigma and discrimination. Othering is the beginning of the conversation as we think about stigma. Take a moment, read this to yourself. So I have a couple of chuckles, so I'm going to take 3 reactions, okay?
Honestly, this comment makes me tired.
Tell me more.
Because the last one says, your kind can never understand. We are in this room because we want to educate others about this awareness. There are whole groups of people, whole cultures, they call themselves a culture, who don't want to understand. And after a while, I get tired. Because is it my obligation to educate you? All you want to do is watch Fox News? All you want to do is keep your algorithm on Facebook and Instagram the same thing? Do I have to do it? And when I take the time out to do it, I can see the wheels turning, but then you get stuck in your ways. And it's real hard. But it needs to stop at providers for sure. And sometimes we gotta let family go, sometimes we gotta let friends go when they just don't wanna understand.
Thank you. You look like you wanna talk, Frank. Go ahead. He made eye contact.
I'm Edward, and to me, othering is the beginning of indecision. And the government constantly tries to keep us in an indecisive mood. So when it comes to making decisions about your health, they want you to decide what you can do without giving you the information or the whereabouts to get what you need to do. And to me, that's what othering is. To taking away my choice, but acting like you're giving me a choice.
One more?
Othering is them being scared of us learning our history, taking our history away, or them not wanting to learn our history for themselves to understand where the wrong has come into place.
Got it. Thank you. The comment starts with "Stop othering me." Friend in the middle. So what is othering? Your kind can never understand. Something distinguishable, something perceivable, something that you can put a characteristic on can be used for this process of othering. I promise you, it took me 2 years. Oh, your hand, Jamie?
Yeah, so.
Get the rear microphone. It's a microphone at the back table, right?
It can't be on when yours is on, trust me. We had a whole huddle.
Okay, I'll turn my, no, might as well, go ahead.
Okay, sorry, I'll be quick.
Okay, so I've seen this slide like a lot, and something that's interesting to me that I didn't necessarily notice before is you have the person on the right who's like, stop doing this, right? So maybe they have some level of enlightenment or awareness about what othering is and things like that, but 2 little squares later, they're enacting on someone else a form of othering. And so for me, like for this version of where I, in this moment today, I see that, and there's an element of humanity and humility to that, because it does make me tired too, right? But when I look at this, I'm like, even when we leave this week, we might be having the best intention to dismantle stigma and stop it, but we may 2 seconds later make a mistake ourselves, right? Or step into a space where maybe we are doing a little othering. So I don't know, I just never noticed that, and I've seen this probably like 45 times. So I just wanted to put that out in the universe.
Can I say something? And I think that for me, after seeing this a lot of times,
But we all would be like,
I know.
after a while.
Okay,
no, we doing like bridesmaids. Y'all ever seen bridesmaids? Yeah. But I think for me, watching this a lot, not only did I pay attention to how quick you can go from being a person that's experiencing othering, right? But also to how people can enact othering, but when othering, as innocent as it may be, because it comes from like implicit things, right? It can also be the floodgates for stigma. It can also be the floodgates for misinformation. So it's important, although we get tired, it's important that when we find ourselves on this end, where we are now othering, right? It's important that we have those hard-to-have conversations in order not to perpetuate more stigma, or in order to even, it's almost like you're affirming someone enacting stigma when you refuse to have those conversations. So I know it's hard, but that's kind of what happens to us. We get othered to a point where we feel frustrated, where we feel like we can't continue our work, or we get tired. But those are the spaces where that stigma becomes affirmed. So we have to make sure, and we're going to be talking a lot about how to have those conversations.
Just quickly, I'm so glad we got here. I'm now bothered by the historical trauma slide, because I feel like this is a trap. I feel like this slide is a trap. It's like reverse racism. And I feel like because we have located trauma and mistrust to the past, we now don't have any power to confront it because those people are quote unquote dead or out of power. But if we locate trauma and stigma and all this discrimination as a present, then I can talk to you about what's happening now. So I feel like some of us in our upwardly mobile narrative are trying to escape a history and say, oh, that was then. But if we own then as a now, then we can have a conversation in the now. And so I feel like that slide, you mentioned it, I feel like that slide shouldn't say historical trauma. It should be present trauma. Because then that allows us to talk about what's happening now. And then perhaps instead of your kind could never understand, we could tell a story about our experience and what happened to us. That way we get to escape that whole victim blaming shift thing that would happen otherwise.
I love that you said that. I just want to say there's a difference between, because it can be, so just like you said, take historical out, right? There's some people that may feel like that piece is very crucial to the current, but I think using the word inactive and active is more descriptive, right? Because something could be active trauma with me that still happened historically, but it's active, relevant to my today, and it helps me to connect. So I love that you said that. Anybody else?
Use ongoing instead.
I'm sorry?
Use ongoing.
Oh, ongoing.
I really get pissed off because I'm 75 and I witnessed so much trauma, stigma, and even today, right now, as I'm speaking to you all, it happens among us, ourselves. If we're in a position to help somebody, what we do when we go there, I've been there, you make me wait 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 hours in your office, almost closing time. When you put people before me and rush them up, and then you have this analysis, well, I thought they needed to see you before. We do it to ourselves a lot of times. We get in positions, we forget where we came from. And if the shoes is on your feet, or in your family are knocking at your door, then you want to address it. When you've already scrutinized against me, them, us, it's just people like us get in positions, some black doctors, I've witnessed it. They scrutinize against us. They'll put you over here and put Miss So-and-so over there because Miss So-and-so is my friend. So we got to put the friends, eradicate this friendship, and address the real issue. Our help.
I feel like what you said was a power dynamic where people who normally would be oppressed become the oppressor because they're emulating systems once they get a little power.
Now, I also have to say, this is day one. And y'all hit all the slides.
I know. From
Y'all
tomorrow.
hit all the slides. Okay? So that is, I think that's the power of this training. Okay? So yes, you should be upset. You should call into question historical versus contemporary versus ongoing. It's working. I think of the stages of change. I think the most important stage that one goes through is from pre-contemplation to contemplation. So some initial stimulation to spark you for asking those what ifs, those and buts. Okay? So it's working. It's working. Allow me to click through some more slides. Okay? And we gonna continue the journey. All right? Othering is the pre-concept for stigma. Okay? Irving Goffman, a sociologist, wrote about the different types of stigma. There's multiple types of stigma. Okay? I don't know what I said. Oh, great job. Thank you, Bert. Irving Goffman, a sociologist, wrote about different types of stigmas. Okay? We like to think of there's 4 big buckets of stigma. Okay, and we'll talk about the 4 buckets in a moment. He also drove deeper into how individuals deal with stigma. So how do we interact with stigma? Between each other, between the systems that we live within, and also inside of ourselves. Okay? And finally, how persons with stigma relate to others. So again, going back to, the goals that we started with, this is getting at that interpersonal. Inter and intra. Okay? Stigma is an attribute that links a person to an undesirable stereotype, leading other people to reduce the bearer from whole and usual person to a tainted, discounted one. So again, this is the foundation that Goffman wrote about back in the 50s, 60s, 70s. All right? So some traits, something that you can lay eyes on, something that you can touch, something that makes someone different, goes into reducing that person, that individual, from whole to less than whole. Okay, some stigmatizing attribute. All right? Types of stigma. So again, the branching off. Okay? The first one is discredited. A stigma which is observable. What are some things that are observable?
Teeth.
Say it again.
Teeth.
Teeth? Dental care. Okay? Something you can see.
Like yelling a slanderous term at you.
Okay?
Ignoring a person.
Ignoring a person.
Facial expression.
Facial expression.
Refusing to serve.
Refusing to serve.
Poor service.
Poor service. Last night. Stigma that you can see. Okay? It also includes body types, skin color, hair texture. Okay? I mean, in fraternities and sororities, we got a couple of HBCU grads in here. Fraternities and sororities. We've heard of paper bag tests.
Oh, yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
Oh, y'all hear with me? Okay. If you're on a plane, and you see a person of a different body type begin to walk down the aisle, everyone on the plane looks down like, oh my God, please don't say that.
Yeah.
That's stigma. Okay? All of it is stigma as a result of something you could observe. Discreditable stigma is the stigma which is not observable. Health status, socioeconomic status, education level,
Where you live.
where you live, who your mom and daddy is,
Who you praise. What
who you
God
hang
you
out
serve.
with. All of those things, something that is not observable. Again, it is used to break folks apart. It is used as a categorizing system. This is the beginning of the branching of stigma. He also created something known as the stage theory. Okay? And it's 3 participants within this stage theory. The first one is the own. That is the people who have the same stigma. The people who have the same stigma. The second cast member is called the wise. These are people who have offered their support to the stigmatized persons in the group. And finally, the normals. Don't like the word normals, but again, it was written in the 70s, so we'll just leave it. People who do not possess the stigma. So, using us as a macrocosm, the own could be the people who we provide services to. Okay? So again, thinking about we're doing this to reduce stigma and discrimination at the Ryan White HIV/AIDS program level. So the own would be participants of the Ryan White programs. People living with HIV. Okay? The wise would be the folks working at the clinic, the organization. Okay? Those are the wise. Those are the people who are helping folks living with HIV. And the normals would be larger community. The stage theory gives us the power to truly think about the own. So people living with HIV oftentimes can only be themselves at the organizations that we provide services to. Let me say it again. Oftentimes, the stage theory gives us the terminology where people living with HIV may only be able to be their full selves when they come to our offices. As the people providing support and assistance, our due diligence is to be able to remove barriers, discrimination, fear, denial, to ensure those people get what they need to be the healthiest that they can be. If that includes calling them by their preferred name, greeting them by their pronouns, if that includes having a pack of crackers right in because they haven't ate, we have to do everything that we can do to reduce the stigma, discrimination, fear, and denial, to ensure those persons are getting the assistance that they need from the outside, who oftentimes is oblivious to what's going on. That's what the stage theory is.
Can you unpack the first part of what you were saying, that they can only be their full selves? Can you unpack that a little bit? I feel like that needs to be.
Absolutely. So, your colleagues is going to unpack it. Let me find my microphone. So, there you go.
Okay. I feel like because of the way I identify as trans. And people tend to read me as being a cisgender person. And I don't even agree with being gendered. So as part of that, I'm not whole with a lot of people I'm in community with because they don't see how I feel like I'm genderless. And I get served a lot. And every moment is not a teachable moment. So I don't take the time to correct people. And that means that I'm not seen whole, and I'm not whole when I'm in community with a lot of people.
Well, so let me get over here. That what happened. My mic has to be off.
You're gonna be in shape after this.
Hey, you see that? The people ask like, how you stay so skinny? Girl,
Hello everyone, I'm Angie. With myself, I feel that when I walk in the door to the time I come in security and when I go to where I need to go to, I want to be myself. I don't want to have to change myself at any time or any moment. So when I started working with Total Health Care, they made me feel that way. They didn't discriminate, they didn't make me feel like family, because I had all walls up. I didn't trust nobody, because that's how it made me feel at that time. But later on, they let me know that I belong, I can be myself, I don't have to come in there with no barriers because they're there for me. So yes, it takes a lot to understand that, to be your own self, because being with WISE, it don't always happen all the time.
Okay, so you opened up this session by explaining what stigma is, and it's reductive. I'm not a whole person, I'm this one label, right? So it reduces me as a person. And then we talk about here how for a lot of folks who come into, where we work and what we do, that might be the one place where, y'all the only ones who know my status, so I can be myself, or you're the only place I could go to really be affirmed in my gender identity, right? So maybe that's where they're experiencing whole person. Think of the moral injury when your space is a haven that I'm hopeful I can be my full self, but when I come into it, I still experience stigma and discrimination. I'm still reduced. That to me was really powerful, and we know that it happens, right? So anywho, I just wanted to put that sort of paradox together.
That's the moral. Okay. I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna bounce over here, okay?
Also, I think it's we need to look at, I need to look at it as a different way. Because oftentimes when I come into these spaces as a minister, the first thing I get is judgment. So when I come into a setting like this and conversations are had, topics are had, oftentimes, I hear the word church. I'm affiliated with the church. I'm in the ministry. So, oftentimes, am I supposed to be less of a minister when I come into these spaces because of the setting that I'm in? I should be made to feel whole when I come into these settings, because I shouldn't have to be a part of me out there and a part of me in here. So, aside from HIV, I think that's another area that oftentimes we don't look at. Other professions that people come in, when we bring people in from the community, do we have to be less than when we come into this position? Even as an HIV positive woman, am I supposed to come into this position and be just that woman with HIV or an HIV positive minister? So I'm just saying I should be comfortable in that space.
Thank you.
Well, I was thinking along the lines of, if you think about the intersection and then you think about that sometimes when you go into space, you have to compartmentalize who you are to be in community with people, even though they may look like you.
Also, to piggyback off of what Daniel is saying, I think when it comes to providers and when it comes to community-based organizations, and we're wanting to be that space where people can show up as their whole self. So to kind of reframe that, we're wanting that. More often what happens is these spaces are not, right, that affirming space. I think that we take measures as community-based organizations and providers, such as holistic approaches to with wraparound services, right? So oftentimes, as a provider, you may be providing wraparound services, but the person and the people who are directly implementing that service to the public, doing their direct service work, may not have what it is your intention are set out to be, right? But the intention is that people can show up as their whole selves. The intention is that as providers, you're having conversations where people feel seen, right? And where people can show up honestly, right? So I think that that's being a part of the own, but then being the wiser, you would want your staff to be the wiser. You would want all the way to the receptionist, right? I know we talk about this in a lot of sessions, and you hear that term, oh, the front desk staff, but that front desk staff is really important because they should be the wisers. They should not be, I hate to use the normals, but they shouldn't be in the group of people, because when you think of the wisers, these are people that not only know about the stigma that people are experiencing, but they also add support to the situation to alleviate some of this stigma.
So again, keep this in mind as you are implementing the services that we implement. Responses to stigmatization. So these are often responses that we see over the community. Physically removing the stigma. So removing yourself from that stigma. Okay? Again, thinking about the Ryan White HIV/AIDS program, you know, maybe you have the luxury of finding a different clinic to go to. Finding a different medical staff, removing yourself from the stigma. Master the area that stigmatizes them. So people living with HIV become subject matter experts. Okay? Use their stigma for secondary gain. Being a subject matter expert, figure out the best way to get a check to support that.
Okay.
Huh?
Hello.
Okay. Get a coin, you know, get a status, you know, do that, you know. But again, connect it to removing the stigma. View their stigma as a blessing. I have heard numerous people say HIV was the best thing that happened to me. Okay? Again, using the stigma, okay, or something that folks perceive that would stigmatize them, using it to remove stigma. Reassess the limits of the normals. Girl, ain't nobody normal. Sis, is it on? Sis, no one is normal. Okay, remembering that. Avoid contact with them. Again, no one is normal, but you can avoid contacting them. Okay? I think the oddest thing is when people watch Fox News on airplanes. Like, girl, how? Like, really? Wow. Finally, seek out sympathetic others. I don't like sympathetic others. I think it should be empathetic others. Okay? But again, creating a new tribe. Okay? These are ways stigma can be addressed. Let me grab the mic. Thank you, Fred.
I'm kind of circling back to what Dr. Keller had said about showing up as a full person, and this might kind of take us back, but like, I really struggle with showing up with all of my identities if part of my identities trigger somebody who needs care. And I'm wondering like how, maybe we talk about this later, right? But like, how does that work into the response to that? You know what I mean? Like the church is super triggering for a lot of people. Whiteness is super triggering for a lot of people. Like how do we hold that to be true, but also like take responsibility for that? You know, I don't know, I really struggle with that.
Yeah, and I think different sections begin to get at that. I think the 35,000-foot answer is reminding folks that I am an individual and I am not the whole. So Dr. Keller is not representing all of spirituality, Christianhood, or whatnot. You know, I am an individual within this, you know, and we need more of the eyes, again, to make that system change. You know, I am one white person. I'm not all the white people, you know. Oftentimes, that is not, that space, though, you know, we have to remember, that space is not afforded to the black and brown people that we provide services to.
Correct.
Okay? But again, it's holding that space to have those conversations. Questions? Okay. So I've been talking. It's 11:05. We will do a 10. Girl, quiet. We will do a 10-minute break. Okay. So let's come back at 11:15. Restrooms outside to your left.
Restrooms outside to your left.
Okay.
I think these will be.
It's like a little mini.
Because this used to be Argyle. They used to make stoves. And this was a whole business. And they took it and they saved part of it. So that's where these come from. That was Argyle. It was the factory.
Danielle, they're paging you in the back.
And they were a big, they were a humongous stove making company. Oven, cooking. It doesn't have a bar.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe if the tables were not
My phone was ringing. I was pressed. I had to get the pre-show first. When I got I'll go back and get so I could easily get here. But then this morning, when I went to pick her up, she was like, what does my phone on the floor so people come around? And come back and that was like 20 minutes. Then I'm parked behind the whole city.
Please go out the room, take a break, because we don't want you to miss nothing. The main ones in here be the first ones stepping out when we come back. Please step out, take your break, stretch your feet.
Yes, go up my own side. Oh my God, everybody got on pearls. I'll be out with a pearl. I'm trying to go to the house and get my pearl. You was really curled up yesterday. Y'all got on the day. You just give them a little something today. I ain't gonna, you ain't gonna do it. I got you. Okay.
That's all on you.
Every time. You know what? I had so many pearls.